Welcome to the Climate Gap Quick Cuts, the podcast for busy people building climate solutions. We spotlight founders, builders, operators, and investors doing the hard work behind real progress. I'm Ben, co-founder of LMC. We connect climate tech companies with the people who make scale possible. Let's get into it. Not every pilot dies in the graveyard. Some are born ready to scale, but the rules have changed. Ben Dwyer of KODE Labs joins us today to break down what separates a scalable smart building deployment from yet another stalled POC. From designing with the end user in mind to structuring deployment standards at the OS layer, this is an inside look at what real scale looks like and what it demands. CIOs and CTOs are now the power brokers of smart buildings, reshaping how tech gets deployed across portfolios, not just properties. Energy efficiency alone isn't enough. Platforms have to solve for labor gaps, drive operational cash flow, and prove they're architected for a 1,000 building future. Let's get into it. So Ben, thanks for joining. Could you kick us off with an introduction to you and your background?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much. We're super humbled with the opportunity. And yeah, Ben Dwyer runs sales here at KODE. So I'm responsible for all of our go-to-market activities associated to our direct customers, really focused on 5 core verticals where we're really helping both end users, owners, occupiers, and those that inhabit their spaces really drive operational efficiency leveraging our KODE OS platform. So really excited about the discussion today, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course, yeah, we'd love to hear what you guys are doing, and it's an interesting topic today, taking pilots beyond the graveyard. I'm sure that you'll have some really interesting insights for our listeners. So I guess one of the things when we spoke earlier, you talked to me about the new power brokers, the way that you see it. CIOs and CTOs are emerging as the owners of the smart building tech stack far beyond real estate or FM teams. How has that shift changed the game for pilots and rollouts?
Yeah, we're seeing a complete seismic shift in decision-making power from, really the operations and the real estate teams being the core decision makers to now really expanding into the CIO and CTO suites. So really over the last 6 to 18 months, we've really seen the CIO and the CTO really emerge as really key players in the decision-making process that's happening in leveraging a platform such as KODE OS. Really the reason why is these leaders bring really the true enterprise scale mindset to deployment of platforms such as KODE. So they're not just evaluating technology for 1 or 2 buildings, but they're really looking at this at scale for the entirety of a global portfolio. So as a result, pilots have become more than just tech demos per se. They're treated like strategic IT deployments that are really going to have a rigorous evaluation around cybersecurity, cloud architecture, data governance, system interoperability. And this shift is also pushing the industry towards standardization at the operating system level, not just at the device or infrastructure level or even down to the building level. Think of it as moving from smart devices to really smart operating platforms. So platforms like KODE OS are now seen as enterprise operating systems for buildings that really are helping to unify disparate systems, simplifying integrations, and truly enabling scale beyond just an individual pilot or an individual building. So really, in short, pilots aren't proof of concept anymore. They're really proof for readiness for scale.
With labor shortages in FM and engineering, how can smart building platforms actually alleviate staffing pressures rather than add another tool for already overwhelmed teams?
Yeah, I could not agree more on FM and engineering labor pool is really aging, shrinking, and it's completely overwhelmed because of that. And I think all of our clients are feeling that, our partners are feeling that. And it's something that I think really a smart building platform really offers a lot of relief, not necessarily burden when implemented correctly, right? And so that's why when we talk about first deployments and preparation for scale, we're really making sure that the teams that are going to be consuming and using the platform on a daily basis are going to be using the platform to help to enhance their ability to service the buildings versus being burdened with another platform that they have to engage with to perform their work. And so first, they consolidate fragmented systems into a single pane of glass. So technicians aren't toggling between five different platforms just to troubleshoot just one issue, right? This gives them that single point that they can really engage in. Secondly, platforms like KODE help teams shift from reactive maintenance, where I feel like teams are overwhelmed and overburdened because they're working so hard to solve things that are happening right now, into this mindset of proactive and even predictive maintenance. So that creates fewer emergencies that they're dealing with, faster triage, better prioritization of their day-to-day workflows. And I think this is helping them alleviate some of the stresses that they're feeling day in and day out. Third, with remote diagnostic tools and automations, we're enabling centralized operation centers to handle tasks that used to require on-site staff. So we're seeing a lot of our partners, we're seeing a lot of our clients move towards a centralized operating center model, where a lot of the alarms, the things that pop up day in and day out for the building engineers are being able to be resolved in a remote fashion, which allows the engineers and the technicians that are on site to be performing very high value tasks that are making sure that the underlying infrastructure is working in the way that it should. Finally, it's also changing who enters the industry, right? So we're seeing, there's not a lot of people that are saying, I want to become a building engineer, or I want to be, chief engineer. So really kind of changing the key components of what that actually means to be an operator of buildings around analytics, AI, machine learning capabilities built in. Smart platforms really help to attract a new tech savvy talent pool that I think we can start to pull from that potentially we haven't been able to pull from in the past. So it starts to open up a lot of different channels where we can start to attract new talent into the space. So this is a transformational shift for the FM space, from wrench turning to really data-driven problem solving. So a real key takeaway for us here is we're not just solving the labor shortage problem, we're redesigning the workflows associated to those that are servicing the asset, and smart platforms turn firefighting into foresight and engineers actually into analysts.
Yeah, there's something great about that opportunity to overlap your skill sets into something new and grow. And I really like that strategy that you guys have rolled out. As we're getting into this, I'm thinking about beyond ROI, and there is a lot of pressure in our environment at the moment, right? Interest rates are at multi-decade highs, and tax deductions on capex can sweeten the deal. How do you weave interest rate sensitivity and depreciation timelines into your scale-up pitch so CFOs can't say no?
Yeah, it's an interesting time to say the least. I think the industry has been really confronting this problem for a while, and high interest rates force CFOs to be just absolutely ruthless about capital allocation. They're scrutinizing every single dollar of capex and demanding fast, tangible returns on any investments that are being made. The key is to reframe the smart building investment not as a cost center, but as a platform for operational cash flow optimization. So with platforms like KODE, you unlock a lot of different ROI pieces and components that are really starting to really help to address the problem around ROI. So some of these things include immediate energy savings, reducing labor spend. So, this kind of goes into the question that we were just talking about of optimizing the engineer and the technician. Extended equipment life. So, by optimizing how equipment is running, you're able to extend the life of the equipment that's the underlying infrastructure, for which is obviously a huge capital expenditure for all owners, occupiers, and everybody that's leveraging buildings. And then the centralized operations that scale without additional headcount, right? So how do you get to that point where you can become operationally efficient leveraging a platform such as KODE? So we lean into CapEx friendly financing models, for example, amortized software plus implementation costs that allow for accelerated Section 179 deductions or bonus depreciation depending on jurisdiction. So we're really playing into these components that make it easier for the CFO to really lean into this. But we also show how the software creates OpEx reductions that kick in right away. giving CFOs really that relief in year one, not just at the end of our contracts, which are typically at the end of year five. So what makes it especially compelling in today's environment that CodeOS acts like a financial infrastructure. It de-risks operations, really creates budget predictability, and delivers compounding value as more assets are added to the platform.
I've often heard about the 1,000 building test. What's the single design decision or architectural pattern you insist on if you know a pilot must someday operate across 1,000 buildings and will falter if you skip it?
Yeah, there's a few things that we really want to hone in on. First being incredibly detailed in the use case standards that really allow for dependable deployments site by site and the ability to script or create workflow optimizations when it comes to how we deploy. So if every site has a different use case, that's fine. We can tweak it post via our client success engineering teams. But for the initial deployment, we want to really create a standard set of interfaces, modules, et cetera, that are the standard components that are being deployed across the entirety of the platform. So really focus on the detailed use cases up front. Also really focus on a scalable network connectivity approach. So smart buildings and most new technologies all live on the network. So making sure the network connectivity approach, building to building, is scalable is a huge piece of the puzzle at the very beginning. So not just for integration, but for observability. If you're busy fixing network or connectivity issues across the active sites, you can't focus on continuing to deploy. So this is a super important piece of the puzzle up front. Some smaller things that are very tactical, service accounts for APIs, BMSs that the client can load in all their systems so that code doesn't need to chase credentials all the time is super helpful. And lots of technologies have tips and tricks to them that allow us to scale with them fast. An example would be a standard backnet ID that let us normalize the data very fast versus doing it one by one by building by building. So these standards really help tactically for us to be able to do that. And then I think last but not least is knowing the user base very well. In pilots, you may know what will let you prove out value, but then as you scale, you're truly their operating system, and that means many more users with many more asks. Right? So making sure that you're clearly defining the use cases up front for all of the various users of the platform. So if you don't think about this in the pilot, you'll get into a full scale deployment and we'll have to almost redo your deployment because the features you turned on in the pilot may not end up applying for the full set of users or organizational needs at scale. So getting a clear understanding of all of those users of the platform, whether it's executives, operators, partners, whoever may be using the platform, and really designing it to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of those users is super crucial to be done up front.
I felt those were really good 3 or 4 bits of insights. I'm sure there'll be lots of people nodding when they are watching this. So our last question around policy as a growth lever. Imagine you could rewrite one regulation, energy codes, tax incentives, procurement rules to unlock mass adoption overnight. What would you change and why would it make all the difference?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a selfish response, but one that I think is like very, very, very serious and something that I think will drive the industry changes that I think are going to be incredibly beneficial to all of the points that I've discussed earlier. But if I could change one thing, it would be to introduce federal tax incentive for deployment of smart building operating systems like CodeOS. And the simple question is why? I think really the benefits ripple across multiple fronts. First is energy efficiency, right? Look, there's been conversation about sustainability, energy, all of these things for a very, very long period of time. But the reality is smarter operations really reduce energy waste and lower the burden on the grid. We have struggles associated with the electrification of the US, and we need to find all the ways that we can reduce the burden on the grid and operating systems like CODES are very important in really driving that energy efficiency. So while we continue to focus on driving sustainability, really the reduction of energy consumption at the building level is going to it really have a huge impact on the long-term viability of the grid in the United States, as well as globally. And then labor innovation. So automation and analytics ease workforce pressures and open up new types of tech forward jobs. Look, AI and ML is what everybody's talking about at all times. And I think infrastructure is an industry where AI and ML can have a massive impact. And if we can really start to create a environment where we're starting to open up a new labor channel for being able to leverage an operating system like a code OS, you start to create new jobs in a space where we have a significant shortage of those. And so I think the labor innovation is a massive piece of why introducing federal tax incentives would be an important piece of the puzzle. And then I think last but not least is asset longevity. Smart platforms really extend the useful life of existing buildings, which is critical in the world with limited capital for new development. And so the more we can leverage the existing infrastructure that we have today and really drive the efficiency of those assets, the less and less we'll have to be reliant on reconstruction, new developments and things in order to meet the needs of the end users that inhabit those spaces. So just like solar panels and EVs got a boost from incentives, smart infrastructure needs the exact same push. And a modest policy change could really accelerate the adoption exponentially and drive progress in energy, the economy, and then overall environmental goals all at once. Right. So I selfishly threw that plug in there, but if I could look for one thing, that would be exactly it.
Maybe there's a career for you on Capitol Hill after this, Ben. You pitched that so eloquently.
No, we'll see if we can get some lobbying done. But if there's anybody out there that needs support in doing so, we here at Code would 100% support it.
That is fantastic. Thank you ever so much for all of your time and your insights. I really like the way that you've shaped your narrative and your strategy around taking pilots through to completion. And I think there's lots of tips there that people can pick up. So thanks again for your time, Ben.
We are humbled and appreciative of the opportunity. And yeah, feel free to reach out. Anybody that's listening to this, if you have any questions about code or our perspective on things, we're open to the discussion anytime.
Here are some takeaways from Ben Dwyer worth replaying. 1, the new gatekeepers aren't in FM, they're in IT. Smart building platforms must now meet enterprise level expectations around cybersecurity, cloud architecture, and system interoperability. Pilots today are stress tests for global scale tomorrow. Second point, don't sell software, sell operational cash flow. With interest rates high, smart infrastructure only wins when it proves CapEx ROI and immediate OpEx relief. That means reframing your tech stack as a lever for financial resilience, not just sustainability. Third point, I guess, design for 1,000 buildings from day one. That means standardized deployment, playbooks, scalable network connectivity, and a deep understanding of every user persona, not just your pilot champion. This is Quick Cuts. Short episodes, sharp insights, no filler. Catch you next time. You've been listening to the Climate Gap Quick Cuts. If you're building in climate tech, subscribe to hear more from the people making it happen.